There are three direct or positive correlation functions that we will consider. Recall, in a direct or positive correlation, as x increases, it causes y to increase, or as x decreases, it causes y to decrease. To make it easier to understand, I'll be using some number examples to show you the three functions. First is the constant direct correlation. A constant correlation implies that as x changes, y changes proportionally the same amount. Proportionally the same amount. Let's say that x changes by 1 and y changes by 2. What's the amount that y changes with respect to x? It's 2 times. So if y is always changing proportionally the same amount, when x changes by 2, y will change by 4. And when x changes by 3, y will change by 6. What I would suggest now is that you graph these three sets of coordinates and join them together to see what the curve looks like. What the curve is going to look like is something like this. As x increases by 1 unit, y increases by twice the number of units. So this is 1 and this is 2, or this is 2 and 4, 3 and 6. Or another way to describe a constant direct correlation is that y is increasing at a constant rate. Here, the constant rate is 2 times x. Now this could vary. It could be 2x, or it could be half x, or it could be 1x, where an increase in x brings about the same amount of an increase in y. The second correlation is an increasing direct correlation. An increasing direct correlation is one in which as x changes, y changes, but proportionally a greater amount. So if we go to a change in x, let's say we have x changing by 1, 2, and 3, if y is changing a greater amount each time, then initially we could have a change in y of 2. This would be 2 times x. Then for y to increase a proportionally greater amount, let's say 3 times x, if x changes by 2, then y changes by 6. And then the last, we would be having, say, 4 times x. And so as x changes by 3, y would change by 12. How does this look as we graph it? It's similar to this. We start out with a relatively flat curve, and then it increases rapidly. Or you can say that y is increasing at an increasing rate. And the rate, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. How do we understand this visually? At lower values of x, say at this point, the curve is relatively flat. But at higher values of x, y is increasing faster, and so the curve is steeper. And so as x increases, the amount that y increases, given the change in x, is greater. Or the slope of the curve gets steeper as the independent variable increases. whereas in the constant direct correlation, as the independent variable increases, the dependent variable increases the same amount. So the curve remains the same flatness or steepness. And so, with the constant direct correlation, our curve remains the same steepness. With an increasing direct correlation, our curve gets steeper. So then, you should be able to determine what happens with a decreasing direct correlation. Perhaps first, you can try changing these numbers so as to show that as x changes, y changes proportionally less. Once you've determined some coordinates, then you can try to plot them on the graph. Okay, with decreasing direct correlation, as x increases or decreases, y changes proportionally less. So if we start with a change in x of 1 and y is 2, for example, we have 2x. 2x gives you y. Now with the decreasing direct correlation, this number has to decrease as x changes. So let's go to 1.5 times. So y, the change in y will be 3. Then we can go to 1 time. If x changes by 3, then y changes by 3. And so what this curve looks like when x is 1, y is 2. When x is 2, y is 3. And when x is 3, y again is 3. So we're getting a curve that flattens out. It becomes less steep. Or we say that y is increasing at a decreasing rate. How do we see this? Initially, at small values of x, the line is steep. But as x gets larger, the curve gets flatter. And so with the decreasing direct correlation, as x increases, y increases, but it slows down. As opposed to an increasing direct correlation, as x increases, y increases, but at greater amounts, and a constant direct correlation where x increases, but y increases at a constant amount.